and gentlemen, I am so excited to have my good friend Jen Shirkani here with me today. She has recently just put out her book, Choose Resilience, which is available on Amazon. It's available on her website, and she'll tell us all about that. So Jen, thank you so much for your time here with us today. I have a bunch of questions for you. Let's just start with what prompted this Choose Resilience, that idea of resiliency. Why is that message relevant for you now?
Well, I wrote my first book called Ego versus EQ, and it was really a book about emotional intelligence and leadership. And so it's a very business-focused book. And that came out in 2013. And since then, a lot has changed in the world. We're facing
a lot has changed in the world.
A lot in the last 3 years. It's unbelievable, in fact. And I started working on this book probably 2 years ago now. So we were in the throes of this election period, and we have all of these issues related to world politics and terrorism. And I just felt like everybody was seeming almost fragile, like this is overwhelming, this information, and even a little dramatic about this is almost the end of the world type of talk.
People getting extreme? I can't believe it.
Yeah, I know. And so I thought, everybody needs to just calm down here. Like, we are stronger than we are giving ourselves credit for. We need to not overly dramatize on either side, not romanticize one event and not catastrophize it either. Mm-hmm. And so using emotional intelligence, I thought, okay, this is kind of the logical second to the first book, which isn't so much about business and leadership, but more about self-leadership and self-management. And we can use that in business or at home.
So much at work and at home. I mean, it applies everywhere. So for those who haven't had the opportunity to read your first book, give us a refresher, and even you bring some things into this one about kind of your fundamental perspective on emotional intelligence, your 3 R's. So ramp everybody up to that, because you utilize that as part of the framework in how you deliver this information.
Sure. So emotional intelligence, in my definition, is 3 broad components. And the first piece of it is recognizing yourself. So it's knowing, things as simple as your personality type and your communication style and your moods. But it's also knowing how I'm feeling at a certain time and why I'm feeling that, and be able to constructively communicate those feelings to others instead of letting those emotions kind of overtake me and undermine me.
So when people just start crying uncontrollably for no reason, that's
or
lacking a little bit
throwing a
of it.
stapler across the room, right?
Yeah.
So it's recognizing, hey, what's going on with me right now? Why am I getting so sensitive about this Facebook post that is offending me to no end, right?
Interesting.
2, it's your ability to read people and situations accurately. So again, not romanticizing them, not seeing them the way you want them to be, but seeing them for what they are and seeing people for who they are, so that you can then respond appropriately and choose responses instead of reacting in a gut way, in an emotional way, instead of shutting down, which some people will do under stress, but really being able to customize a response mindfully instead of reactively.
Okay, so let's jump into this book. One of the things that when I was reading it, I was thinking, man, you are harsh on comfort zones. And not harsh in your presentation, but it's like, oh, if I were comfort zone, I would be like, Jen, why do you hate me so? Or just, just a real, not attack, but a real perspective that helps people look at their comfort zones in maybe in a very helpful way. But it's like, boy, you are after that element of being. Why is that? And tell me how you've realized comfort zones are really limiting for people.
Sure. The comfort zone, I know, does get a bad rap, but it's a real rascal, I've decided.
It's true.
I always say, the enemy of emotional intelligence is the comfort zone, because when I operate from a place that's good for me, I do so at the expense oftentimes of what's good for you. And so it's hard for me to recognize, read, and respond if I'm just doing what comes naturally to me. And then expecting the world to do the adjusting. And It does. The comfort zone lulls us, and the more stressed we are, I think the more we go to the comfort zone. It's our natural instinct to go right back to the things that we find comfortable. And then, in my case, and I talk about this in the book, is the interest to control things. So I stay in that comfort zone, and that by controlling things, I often then set up even worse circumstances for myself.
I gotcha. So do you find that to be the case with many people? I think a lot of people have a sense of need of control, and that creates a sense of comfort. So when change happens and things are out of control, it's very disruptive.
It is. And we oftentimes will only get out of comfort zone when it's imposed on us to do so. A job change or a family change or a health change. And so all of a sudden we're thrown out of comfort zone versus choosing to put yourself out of comfort zone. So you build up some tolerance and some change stress management so that you can then handle things that are out of your control easier.
Well, hold on. In this book, there is a model, the most model, that kind of you give the whole middle section kind of unpacks this idea that is all very much you and kind of how you've realized. And so let me just say this also about your book. I appreciate all the personal revelations that are in it. You give us a lot in the beginning, and then throughout the book, there's more discovery. I thought, I've heard all I need, and I'm going to hear from Jen's personal, and then you reveal some more. So as a side note, how hard or risky or difficult was that for you to be so transparent? I mean, it's in print, like people can read it, they can go to it, they can say, Jen, here's what you said about your past history, family relationships, and business challenges. I mean, you just put it all out there.
I did. This book was so much harder to write. My first book has a lot of stories in it, but it's all about other people. It's all about them and their foibles and what EQ looks like, good and bad. And this one, I felt like, it's time for me to sort of open the kimono a little and share more about my own experience with this behavioral science and why I feel so powerful and why I've devoted a career to this topic. And it was incredibly difficult. I had an editor who helped me write my first book, and I kept telling her, let's just not do this. Maybe we should just put this off. And she'd be like, no, I need another personal story. Are you kidding me? I need more, not less.
Wow.
So it's really difficult. And it, like you said, I feel like I've really put it all. I put my marital challenges out there, my parenting challenges, my financial struggles.
And there's not hardly anything left untouched in your life. I would think just for that, people would want to go, get this book. Okay, so back to the most model. I thought that was very, it's such a resource for people to have this idea of resiliency, which can be an intangible, that you've really outlined a thought process and an approach that is useful, helpful, gives them some way to evaluate and look at themselves in how they're navigating it. Kind of unpack, just tell us a little bit about each of the components of the most model.
Sure. So the most model are all emotional intelligence skills. And within the sort of spectrum of emotional intelligence, there are up to 15 skills that you need to develop to have EQ. And I was thinking about, when it came to resiliency, which ones are really the most important out of those 15. And so I identified 3 of them that I find, both for myself and the others that I've worked with, have been the most powerful. And the first one is motivation. So the M in most is motivation, focusing on what your true motivators are. I think sometimes we find ourselves in jobs or in relationships that at one time seemed like the right thing to do, and then suddenly you're sitting there going, why am I doing this job? And why am I in this relationship? Like, what happened? Because now all of a sudden I have no interest in this. Yeah. And our motivations change over time, and that's why we have to have that self-awareness to know, where's my mojo, where's the energy, and why have I lost it? And how do I reconnect to that core motivation I'm going to need? Because when I get out of that comfort zone, I have to have something to fall back on that keeps me sticking with it, even when it gets difficult.
Yeah.
So that's
Good.
the motivation piece.
Gotcha.
Then you have to have the optimism to know that it's all going to work out okay. And not wide-eyed, dreaming.
I was going to say, wow, you can guarantee that, Jen? It's all
Everything's going to be great.
Yeah.
It's really just a realistic optimism.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
I always say you can't just wish for your life to be different if you're not willing to take the action that needs to be taken. But again, when you hit those dark days, which we all have at various times in our lives, that's when you have to have that positive attitude that things are going to be okay. And give yourself a little credit. I think we, particularly as women, and I, being a female author, I can relate to the readership that are women, because we tend to put a lot of pressure on ourselves. And in the book, I share like that working mom syndrome, and it's never good enough. And everything that goes wrong with my kids or my marriage or whatever, I always feel is a reflection on me because I'm a working mom. And yeah, I think that optimism kind of also takes the pressure off, because you realize, you know what, I got this far. I'm gonna be able to get a little farther now. I need to take some of that pressure off myself that I keep putting on, and know that this is going to be fine. It's not the end of the world here.
Cool. All right, then the ST.
So that's ST, stress tolerance.
Stress tolerance.
Tolerance. So being able to build a bandwidth for yourself to tolerate stress, because again, whether change is imposed on you or you take it on yourself, you're going to hit a stressful period of time. And it is a band. I look at it like you've got a red zone, a yellow zone, and a green zone. And what you need to do is, the way to build stress tolerance is by actually creating moderate amounts of stress for yourself. And the more comfortable we are, the less risk we find ourselves wanting to take. And the less risk we take, the safer we play things. And again, that feeds into lower confidence and fear and a greater stress when things happen to us unexpectedly.
Well, it just shrinks people's world. It's an interesting idea. I mean, most people would say, I don't need to add any stress to my life. I'm already so stressed out, but it's how they manage it, what they do with it, how effective how they navigate it, I suppose.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I have days where I'm like, geez, I don't need to get out of comfort zone. Are you kidding me? I'm just trying to keep this damn place going,
Yeah.
I got enough. Thanks, Shirkani. I don't need to take my own advice on that.
That's right. That is.
But it is the type of stress. I think it's the type of stress. I think we allow ourselves to feel a lot of that urgent but not important stress that Stephen Covey talks about.
Yeah.
And we overlook the important stress.
Hey, speaking of Covey, you've got your own quadrant boxes in here. I appreciate. I'm always like, every time I see the quadrant, it's like an ode to Covey. But it's so helpful, interesting, uninteresting. All those things are just like, I love it. Okay, so in this vein of what would you say you have found with professionals? I don't know. Are you speaking about this now when you're out on the road? Are you like unveiling these things, or have you built all messages around those? What have you found? So that are you doing that now, or are you putting things together that will be just resilience focused compared to the EQ ego focus? And then what are you finding is the most difficult out of that motivation, optimism, stress tolerance for professionals to kind of activate when they're stuck in their comfort zone?
Yeah, so the first question, I do have a talk. I have a talk on Choose Resilience, which is basically following the book. And then I have a talk called SheQ, Emotional Intelligence for Women.
Interesting. Okay.
And so I really just highlight more of those challenges I mentioned that I find women struggle with, both professionally and personally. So
now,
it emphasizes the female.
Let me clarify. I'm a man. Yes. I've read this book. This book is man-friendly as well. For us, it leans. You come from your female perspective, but I got a lot out of it, and I'm a guy. So
I'm glad to hear that
for people. Yeah, really, but that's fun that you're doing a SheQ angle on your communication from it. I think that's cool.
Yeah, I spoke to a group the other day, and one of the ladies came up at the end, and she said, one of the things that really resonated with me, she's just recently gone through a divorce, and she said, I did not feel strong enough. I didn't know if I was going to handle this well, and I didn't know how I was going to do as a single mom. And an incident came up recently with one of her kids getting a broken arm. And she said, and I just handled it. And she's like, you made me realize I'm stronger than I thought I was. I can do this. And I'm like, exactly. And that's how I felt, through the whole story. I was like, many nights I've sat in my bed and cried. I will admit that. But every morning I wake up and go, actually, I guess I can do this. I didn't think I could. And here I am.
Yeah. That's what I was curious on. Like, even now after you've written it, or even because you're able to have hindsight looking back at your personal journey, what are the key elements of the most, or just some of the principles that when you look at it now, you go, this really enabled me to press through and succeed and really be resilient instead of just stay knocked down, or even just feeling it, or just the risk of in your business ventures. I mean, you just revealed things about your business on it, just barely making it, and then still going after it again the next day. Like, what have you discovered about yourself, or maybe that now you see in hindsight that you didn't have labels for it, that now you're putting these labels on, that really helped you, or you see now is helping you have that, I can get up every day and feel like it's going to be okay. We're going to make it.
It's funny. I think two things. One, and this kind of ties to your earlier question about the difficulty for business people, and that is being able to stay engaged in your work and in your relationships and really be present all the time. And, I talk when I do my business talks, and I know you do too, about leadership and the challenges with leadership today and employee engagement in particular. And we've had this kind of crisis of employee engagement where only 30% of people say that they're actively enjoying their work every day and give the extra effort to them. And it's been like that for years. It's right for years. It's hovered about 30%. A third of employees say that they're engaged in work. And I'm always pounding on leaders. Like, what are you doing to be an emotionally engaging leader? Where's your EQ? But I realized as I was writing this book, like, what about the other side of that? I mean, this is your life in the end as an employee. This isn't your boss's responsibility. And I think it's easy to disengage from something and say, it's because of my bad boss. It's because of my bad spouse. It's because of my bad parent, and not really recognize this is up to me to decide if I'm going to stay engaged or not. And I need to do something about that. And I think the other thing, for years, didn't want anyone to know these stories because like you said, Greg, I don't want anyone to know I'm on the brink of losing my house. They're never going to hire me. Like,
yeah.
Who is this hack, right? Like, this is not somebody we want. And who's this to give me relationship advice? She's going through a divorce, for Pete's sake, So I desperately tried to hide a lot of this for many, many years. And I've realized now that I've sort of just put it out there, the pressure I was feeling and that constant ego, probably, protection was taking so much energy. I had no idea. And now I'm just like, you know what? I am what I am. Here it is. Yeah. Here's the story. I'm no better than anybody else. And there's a lot of books out right now that are more kind of tragedy based. I've been reading, of course, all of these incredible stories of survivors and hardship and adversity. And, yes, those things are unbelievably traumatic, but I think more of us are just trying to get through the day and get the bills paid and deal with, kids and marriage and work. And that's really more of the message my book is, how do you just get through the darn day and feel better at the end?
Yeah, that's good. Okay, so tell me about this idea of Catfish, and then we'll wrap it up and have you do a pitch. But, I love this little Catfish story, and so I wanted you to share it here with people watching.
So there's a fable that in the early 1900s, the fishermen in the Northeast were catching cod and shipping it west for people to eat for restaurants and grocery stores. And when it would arrive on the West Coast, people were complaining that the catfish was mushy and tasteless. And so they were trying to figure out how to get it there fresher. And so they decided to switch over from frozen to fresh. And what they would do is they put the cod in these giant tanks and put them on train cars and then transport them alive to the West Coast. But again, by the time they arrived, the catfish or the cod are there feeling, lethargic, and people are complaining the cod is tasteless and not good. So the fishermen realized that the natural predator to a cod is a catfish. And so they started adding one catfish to the tank of cod. So while they were on their journey west, the cod would be swimming along very healthily the whole way. And as soon as they arrived, it was like the most flavorful, wonderful fish.
That's cool.
So we all, have this catfish in our life that's actually good for us. We usually curse them, and at work, sometimes they're our rival, and we're constantly trying to figure out how to outmaneuver them. But what we have to do and sometimes see, this person's actually good for me. This person's keeping me on my toes.
That's really hard for people to do. That's really hard for people to do.
I know, and I'm guilty of it. I have a catfish in my life, my business professional catfish, and I'm constantly thinking, okay, I gotta outmaneuver her. I gotta stay one step ahead of her.
Yeah, so that's healthy. It's not, you don't have to have this nemesis that's an evil will towards. It's like, I want to chase you. I want to stay one step ahead of you.
Yes,
that's such a healthy perspective, and so fun to be able to turn someone who can be so agitating and frustrating to you. Again, it's a self-awareness that says, I can view that person as a real asset to keep me fresh and moving forward and not shrinking back into my comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
or give up.
Or just stop, right? Or just mine. What's the point? Okay, so take 30 seconds, sell this lovely book, where they can find it, what you want them to do with it, and do that with our folks here. Ready, set, go.
Okay, so this book is for somebody who has perhaps in their life thought, I should have it all, right? I have it all. I've achieved a certain level in my career. I have a home, I have a family, and yet you wake up and you're not happy. And it's because there's this lack of fulfillment in your life. And so this book helps you understand where that's coming from, and how to, again, re-engage in what you want, what you need, and how to get it. And then how to see the best of things, how to change your perspective so that you realize you do have the strength. You can turn struggle into strength, and you are much more resilient than you might have even realized that you are. And so it helps you find better happiness, and again, frees you up, I think, from a lot of the worries that we have that are probably not important to have. The book is available on Amazon, on Barnes & Noble. It's also available in the electronic ebook version if you're opposed to paper. And I'm going to be recording the audio very soon. So we'll get an audio version out as soon as possible.
And then your website.
And then my website is jenshirkani.com. And then the book website is chooseresiliencebook.com. We're always looking for Amazon reviews. If you happen to read it, like it, Amazon reviews are worth a fortune to me, worth their weight in gold. So that would be awesome. Send me a note. Let me know if you liked the book, what parts of it resonated for you. I always like to hear that too. I feel like, again, I put it out there, and now I'm kind of just waiting to hear.
You put so much stuff out there. It would be kind if people said, this really spoke to me about this part of my life. You already did the hard work of exposure. And so now just following up and saying, that spoke to me is meaningful, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It is nice to hear back that it meant something to somebody.
Yes, just a little bit of affirmation. It was worth exposing all of that for someone.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I sure appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Greg.
Oh, are you kidding me? Anytime. So Jen Shirkani, her website, her name, get there, go look at it, get the book, Amazon, you'll love it.